And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Oh, faceplant has been a very trying experience today. There's an error message that pops up if you use StreamYard, and it's some inexplicable bit of computerese, and it says basically that it's not going to broadcast from where you normally broadcast. So I think I have a workaround in place. Actually, let me check. I'm going to blather for a minute and check to see if I can find myself on Facebook. Not metaphorically, literally. Now it says Roots, Rails, and Rambles is live now. That's good. But let me see my own page. And no, if I click on that, let's see if I click on this. Let's see if I click on this, if I show up. Yeah, there I am. Okay. Good. Oh, hush, 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 hush. All right. Close enough for rock and roll, ladies and gentlemen. Close enough for rock and roll. Technology is annoying, but on the other hand, we've been able to be doing Sunday night readings since 2020, and it's now 2024, and we've raised a lot of money for various quixotic causes. So I may not be able to see your comments, but know that I can see that there's 6 people watching one way or another. Maybe more are watching and it's not showing up on the little thing up in the corner. I don't know. But it's a joy to have you here. It's a joy to be able to do this. It's a joy to be raising money, ladies and gentlemen. It is a joy to be raising money this week for Rockingham for Progress in the missbellowsfalls Diner. Now, I know, I ask for money for Rockingham for Progress and Rockingham Entertainment Development, my 2 charities of choice, all the time. But the asking for money based around Homer Price and the Doughnuts for Rockingham for Progress and the missbellowsfalls Diner project, it is absolutely fitting. Because as I said last week, and as I used probably in a little bit too long-winded a speech at the downtown conference this last Wednesday that was here in Bellows Falls. But as I said last week, I interrupted the storytelling to point out how both Mr. Gabby and Miss Naomi Enders arrive at Uncle Ulysses' lunchroom just wanting coffee and donuts. And he's a homeless guy who travels by hopping freight trains. And she is a wealthy woman in a limousine. But they both just want some donuts. And that is why we're trying to rebuild the missbellowsfalls Diner. It is a place where class distinctions are meaningless. And you know how annoying it is? Look, if you got the New York Times on your phone, the ads on there are for like Hermes, I don't know, handbags and various people with chiseled features who the people buying it don't have chiseled features. But if you show people with chiseled features wearing some stupid shit, people are going to buy it. So anyway, enough pontificating, ladies and gentlemen, enough pontificating. It says there are 10 people watching one way or another. A few people are watching. I'm looking for comments. I don't get to see comments. I'm sorry, but I love that you're out there. All right, a few people to thank. Mr. John T. Wilhelm, he has been traveling. He was traveling to Albuquerque, New Mexico yesterday staying at the Hotel Andalus, which looks like a great hotel, not terribly expensive, right downtown. And he discovered that Betty Sue and James McMurtry were playing at the Chemo Theater just around the corner. If you've never been to the Chemo Theater, ladies and gentlemen, that is a 1920s movie palace appropriating the culture of the Native Americans in a very kind of Aztec way. John Wilhelm, I see John Wilhelm has posted one way or another. He's watching us. Greetings from the Southwest Chief, he says. Oh, so he got on the Southwest Chief in Albuquerque, I guess. Hi, John Wilhelm, and thank you. Next up, Ms. Catherine Fisher, who just posted a wonderful painting she did of a greyhound. I think she did it in 2014. The community of art is a wonderful thing, ladies and gentlemen. And I am honored to call Catherine Fisher a friend. Thank you, Catherine. Out there sailing through Greece. Well, the country Greece, not sailing through Greece, but sailing around the Ionian Peninsula. Our good friend, Miss Terry Hudson. Laura R. is here. She has not listened to part 1 yet. I'll give you a little plot summation before we get going. Oh, and as ever, Nani Moose is here. Oh, my friend, now this is interesting. This is someone who donated directly to the Diner Project. I assume they're watching, but we said anybody who donated directly to the Diner Project today would get a shout out. So my good friend, Mr. A.T. Leroy. And out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a tiny little dog and a great big heart, my very, very, very tall cousin, Mr. Nat Hunter, and his wonderful wife, Elise. Thank you. Thank you all so much. So, tonight's reading is part 2 of The Doughnuts by Robert McCloskey. Now, as Laura R. asked, what happened in part 1? What happened in part 1 of The Doughnuts? Well, Homer's uncle, Uncle Ulysses, has a very up-and-coming lunchroom. And he had just bought a new donut machine, an automatic donut machine. And the little gizmo drops a ring of dough into the hot fat, and it cooks for a moment. And then another little gizmo flips it over, and the other side cooks, and then a little gizmo pushes the donut out the chute, down and ready to eat. And boy, it is wonderful. Now, Homer came into town to help out Uncle Ulysses. Uncle Ulysses asked Homer to help put the machine back together. And then he, Uncle Ulysses, went off to the barber shop to talk with the sheriff, and really to play checkers, but to talk with the sheriff, leaving Homer alone manning the lunch counter. And Mr. Gabby comes in. Mr. Gabby is just a traveler, travels by hopping freight trains, and he says, I'd like some donuts and coffee. And Homer says, we don't have any donuts, but I can make some, and we'll have them in about a half an hour. Mr. Gabby says, that's fine with me. I got nothing to do. And just after that, Miss Naomi Enders, this wealthy woman, shows up in a limousine with a limousine driver, and she comes in and says, young man, we need some coffee and donuts. And Homer says, well, I'm about to make some donuts, but it's going to be half an hour. And she says, oh, you're about to make donuts? We have the most wonderful family recipe. I must make those donuts. And she takes off her fur coat, and she takes off her jewelry, and she puts it down on the counter, and she starts mixing up the family recipe, and Homer and the chauffeur are handing her ingredients, and Mr. Gabby is watching with great interest. With great interest, and they put the dough mixture into the machine, and Homer says, "Gosh, that's about 10 times as much as Uncle Ulysses ever makes." And then the machine starts making donuts, and Mrs. Enders gets her donuts, and she and the chauffeur pay Homer, and they leave. And Mr. Gabby has a couple of donuts, and Homer has a couple of donuts, and then Homer says that's probably enough donuts, and they tries to turn the machine off, and the machine does not stop. A very gentle satire about American life in the 20th century. The machine does not stop. The machine keeps making donuts. What to do? Homer, ready to deflect, he tries stopping in any number of ways, but the machine just keeps making donuts. And so he calls over to the barber shop. I'll read the last couple of sentences before we stopped last week. "I guess we could sell a few more donuts," said Homer, "but I'd better telephone Uncle Ulysses over at the barber shop." Homer gave the number, and while he waited for someone to answer, he counted 37 donuts roll down that little chute. Finally, someone answered. "Hello, this is the barber shop." "Oh, hello, Sheriff, this is Homer. Can I speak to Uncle Ulysses?" "Well, he's playing pinochle right now," said the sheriff. "Anything I can tell him?" "Hi, Laura R. Laura R. says it's like cars these past couple of years." "Yes, it is. It is. Things may change, but they stay sort of the same." "Well, he's playing pinochle right now," said the sheriff. "Anything I can tell him?" "Yeah," said Homer. "I push the button marked stop on the donut machine, but the rings of batter keep right on dropping into the hot fat, and an automatic gadget keeps right on turning them over, and another automatic gadget keeps giving them a little push, and the donuts keep right on rolling down the little chute, and it will not stop." "Okay, well, hold the wire, and I'll tell him." Then Homer looked over his shoulder and counted another 21 donuts roll down the little chute, all ready to eat. Then the sheriff said, "He'll be right over. He's just got to finish this one hand." That's good, said Homer. "Goodbye, Sheriff. Oh, I see we have a visitor. We have Charbonneau here. Hi, Charbo." Yeah, Charbo would like snacks, but he's not going to get any because I'm reading. The window was full of donuts by now, so Homer and Mr. Gabby had to hustle around and start stacking them on plates and trays and lining them up on the counter. "There sure are a lot of donuts," said Homer. "You bet," said Mr. Gabby. "I lost count at 1,202, and that was quite a while back." Okay, Charbonneau has now climbed onto the table and may start climbing on the keyboard at any moment. And if he does, things may go galley west, but that's why, okay? Or cattywampus, as they might say. Cattywampus because a cat is wampusing things. "You bet," said Mr. Gabby. "I lost count at 1,202, and that was quite a while back." People had begun to gather outside the lunchroom window, and someone was saying, "There are almost as many donuts as there are people in Centerburg, and I wonder how in tarnation Ulysses thinks he's going to get rid of them all." Every once in a while, someone would come inside and buy some, but while someone bought 2 to eat and a dozen to take home, the machine made 3 dozen more. And here, ladies and gentlemen, here is a picture of what is going on in the lunchroom. And there's Mr. Gabby stacking donuts. And there's Homer stacking donuts. And there's Uncle Ulysses wearing a chef's hat and looking very unhappy. And the sheriff looking mighty confused. Such good illustrations. Such good illustrations, ladies and gentlemen. Such a good story. By the time Uncle Ulysses and the sheriff arrived and pushed through the crowd, the lunchroom was a calamity of donuts. Donuts in the window, donuts piled high on the shelves, donuts stacked on plates, donuts lined up 12 deep all along the counter, and donuts still rolling down the little chute just as regular as a clock could tick. Charbonneau is transfixed, ladies and gentlemen. Charbonneau is transfixed. Hello, Sheriff. Hello, Uncle Ulysses. We're having a little trouble here, said Homer. Well, I'll be dunked, said Uncle Ulysses. Darned if you won't be when Aggie gets home, said the sheriff. Mighty fine donuts, though. What'll you do with them all, Ulysses? Uncle Ulysses groaned and said, What will Aggie say? We'll never sell them all. Then Mr. Gabby, who hadn't said anything for a long time, stopped piling donuts and said, What you need is an advertising man. You know what I mean? You got the donuts, you got to create a market. Understand? It's balancing the demand with the supply. That sort of thing. Yup, said Homer. Mr. Gabby's right. We have to enlarge our market. He's an advertising sandwich man. So if we hire him, he can walk up and down in front of the theater and get the customers. You're hired, Mr. Gabby, said Uncle Ulysses. Then everybody pitched in to paint the signs to get Mr. Gabby sandwiched between. They painted Sale on Doughnuts in big letters on the window, too. Meanwhile, the rings of batter, they kept right on dropping into the hot fat, and an automatic gadget kept right on turning them over, and another automatic gadget kept right on giving them a little push, and the donuts kept right on rolling down the little chute, just as regular as a clock can tick. Well, I certainly hope this advertising works, said Uncle Ulysses, wagging his head. Aggie'll certainly throw a fit if it doesn't. The sheriff went outside to keep order because there was quite a crowd by now, all looking at the donuts and guessing how many thousands there were, and watching new ones roll down that little chute just as regular as a clock can tick. Homer and Uncle Ulysses kept stacking donuts. Once in a while, somebody bought a few, but not very often. Then Mr. Gabby came back and said, Say, there's not much use of me advertising over at the theater. The show's all over, and besides, almost everybody in town is out front watching that machine make donuts. Oh, Zeus, said Uncle Ulysses. We must get rid of these donuts before Aggie gets here. Looks like I'll have to hire a truck to haul my hay. Haul them away, said the sheriff who had just come in. Just then, there was a noise and a shoving out front, and the lady from the shiny black car and her chauffeur came pushing through the crowd into the lunchroom. Aren't these the best stories, ladies and gentlemen? Aren't these the best stories? Love these. I loved them when I was 7 years old, and I love them now. Oh, gracious, she gasped, ignoring the donuts. I've lost my diamond bracelet. I know I left it here on the counter, she said, pointing to a place where the donuts were piled in stacks of 2 dozen. Yes, ma'am, I guess you forgot it when you helped make the batter, said Homer. Then they all moved the donuts around and they looked for the diamond bracelet, but they could not find it anywhere. Meanwhile, the donuts kept rolling down that little chute, just as regular as a clock could tick. Now, I got to show you the picture, ladies and gentlemen. I got to show you the picture. If you don't have a copy of Homer Price, you need to get a copy of Homer Price just for the drawings. There is Miss Naomi Enders and her chauffeur coming in. There's Homer with an enormous tray of donuts. There's Uncle Ulysses. There are tubs and tubs and boxes of donuts in the foreground. There are great diner counter stools, just like the ones we're trying to raise money for the Miss Bellows Falls Diner. There's Mr. Gabby with his clearance sale of donuts, 2 for 5 cents while they last sign. And there's the sheriff looking a tad officious. And there are a lot of donuts behind those people. A lot of donuts. After they'd all looked around, the sheriff started casting suspicious eyes upon Mr. Gabby. But Homer said, "No, he's all right, Sheriff. He did not take it. He's a friend of mine." Then the lady said, "I'll offer a reward of $100 for that bracelet. It really must be found. It really must." "Now, don't you worry, lady," said the sheriff. "I'll get your bracelet back." "Oh, Zeus, this is terrible," said Uncle Ulysses. "First of all, these donuts, and then on top of that, a lost diamond bracelet." Mr. Gabby tried to comfort him, and he said, "There's always a bright side. That machine will probably run out of batter in an hour or 2. If Mr. Gabby had not been quick on his feet, Uncle Ulysses would have knocked him down for sure. Then, well, the lady wrung her hands and said, "We must find it. We must." And Uncle Ulysses was moaning about what Aunt Agnes would say, and the sheriff was eyeing Mr. Gabby. Homer sat down, and he thought hard. Before 20 more donuts could roll down the little chute, he said, "Say, I know where the bracelet is. It was lying here on the counter, and it got mixed up in the batter by mistake. The bracelet is cooked inside one of those donuts." "Why, I really believe you're right," said the lady through her tears. "Isn't that amazing? Simply amazing." "Well, I'll be darned," said the sheriff. "Oh," moaned Uncle Ulysses. "Now we have to break up all these donuts to find it. Think of the pieces. Think of the crumbs. Think of what Aunt Aggie will say." "Nope," said Homer. Homer's a good guy to have around, ladies and gentlemen. Homer's a really good guy to have around. "Nope," said Homer. "We won't have to break them up. I've got a plan." So Homer and the advertising man, they took some cardboard and some paint, and they printed another sign. They put this sign in the window, and the sandwich man wore 2 more signs that said the same thing, and he walked around in the crowd out front. Fresh donuts, 2 for 5 cents while they last. $100 prize for finding a bracelet inside a donut. P.S. You have to give the bracelet back. I think this is what inspired me to become a graphic designer, ladies and gentlemen. This was the power of sign making in this story. Well, then the donuts began to sell. Everybody wanted to buy donuts, dozens of donuts. And that's not all. Everybody bought coffee to dunk the donuts in, too. Then those that did not buy coffee bought milk or soda. It kept Homer and the lady and the chauffeur and Uncle Ulysses and the sheriff busy waiting on the people who wanted to buy donuts. When all but the last couple of hundred donuts had been sold, Rupert Washington shouted, "I got it!" And sure enough, there was the diamond bracelet inside of his donut. Then Rupert went home with $100. The citizens of Centerburg went home full of donuts. The lady and her chauffeur drove off with the diamond bracelet, and Homer went home with his mother when she stopped by with Aunt Aggie. As Homer went out of the door, he heard Mr. Gabby say, "Well, that was the neatest trick of merchandising I ever seen." And Aunt Aggie was looking skeptical, while Uncle Ulysses was saying, "Those rings of batter, they kept right on dropping into the hot fat, and the automatic gadget kept right on turning them over, and the other automatic gadget kept right on giving them a little push, and the donuts kept right on rolling down that little chute, just as regular as a clock can tick. They just kept right on coming, and a coming, and a coming, and a coming." Ladies and gentlemen, that is The Doughnuts by Robert McCloskey, one of the great short stories of America, I think. But possibly even better, more subtle. Next week, we start Mystery Yarn. Mystery Yarn, oh, the Eternal Triangle, ladies and gentlemen, the Eternal Triangle. You take good care. We'll see you next Sunday. I'm sorry I can't get Faceplant to show where we're doing this, but I do my best, and I'll always post where I think you can find it. Thank you for watching. You take good care. See you next week. Mystery Yarn. Bye-bye.